I really liked my boss at work, so I gave him head regularly. My husband and kids tried to surprise me one day at work to come and visit me when they caught me in the middle of the intercourse. Now my husband is preparing the divorce papers, but I still love him. I am so embarrassed. What should I do? I never thought I'd be the kind of person to have an affair. I love my husband, Javier, deeply. We've been married for 12 years and have two beautiful children, Diego and Lucia. But things at home had been stale. We barely talked anymore unless it was about the kids or bills. The intimacy had evaporated, replaced by routines and chores. My boss, Rodrigo, is charming, successful, and a little dangerous. He's got this magnetic personality that just draws you in. It all started so innocently, late-night work sessions, sharing personal stories, laughing over drinks after work. Rodrigo made me feel seen, appreciated, and desired in a way I hadn't felt in years. I know it sounds cliché, but it was intoxicating. One night, after a particularly stressful day, we were alone in his office. He poured us both a glass of whiskey, and as we talked, the conversation turned more personal. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were kissing. It was electric, like something out of a movie. I should have stopped there, but I didn't. I couldn't. From that point on, it became a regular thing. I'd sneak into his office during lunch breaks, stay late after work, and we'd find stolen moments together. It was risky and thrilling, and I convinced myself that it was just a physical thing, that it didn't mean I loved my family any less. But deep down, I knew I was playing with fire. Balancing my double life was exhausting. I'd leave home every morning feeling like the worst person alive, kissing Javier goodbye, and knowing what I'd be doing later. At work, I was this different person, confident, desirable, free. Rodrigo made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years, but the guilt was always there, gnawing at me. Every time Javier tried to get close, I'd pull away. I couldn't bear the thought of him finding out, of destroying our family, but I also couldn't stop. It was like an addiction. I'd tell myself each time that it would be the last, but it never was. My kids, Diego and Lucia, were my world. They were the reason I tried to keep my marriage together, despite everything. Diego was 8, with a curious mind and a love for soccer, while Lucia, 6, was my little princess, always drawing and dancing around the house. They adored their father, and I couldn't imagine tearing their world apart. One day, after yet another heated session with Rodrigo, I came home to find Javier had made dinner. He'd set the table with candles, and the kids were excitedly chattering about a movie night. The sight of it all hit me like a punch to the gut. Here was this man, trying to bring some romance back into our lives, and I was betraying him in the worst possible way. I resolved to end things with Rodrigo the next day, but when I walked into his office, he pulled me into a kiss, and all my resolve melted away. I was trapped in this web of my own making, and I didn't see a way out. It was a Wednesday, the day that would change everything. Rodrigo had asked me to come by his office during lunch. I told my assistant Valeria that I'd be in a meeting and couldn't be disturbed. Little did I know Javier had decided to surprise me that day. He'd taken a half day off work, picked up the kids from school, and brought them to my office to take me out to lunch. It was supposed to be a sweet gesture, something to show me he still cared and wanted to spend time together. But I was too busy with Rodrigo to notice the texts or calls from Javier. As I was on my knees in Rodrigo's office, completely lost in the moment, the door suddenly burst open. There stood Javier, Diego, and Lucia, their faces frozen in shock. I felt like my heart stopped. Time seemed to stand still as the reality of what they were seeing sank in. "Valentina, what the fuck?" Javier's voice was a mix of disbelief and rage. Diego's eyes filled with tears, and Lucia just stared, too young to fully grasp what was happening, but knowing it was bad. I scrambled to my feet, trying to cover myself, but the damage was done. Rodrigo was frantically pulling up his pants, looking equally mortified. Javier didn't wait for any explanations. He grabbed Diego and Lucia by the hands and stormed out, leaving me there in a crumpled heap, my world crashing down around me. That night was the worst of my life. Javier took the kids to his sister's place and didn't come home. I sat in our empty house, the silence deafening. My phone buzzed with messages from Rodrigo, but I ignored them. What could he possibly say to make this right? Nothing could. When Javier finally came back the next day, he was a shell of himself. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like he hadn't slept. He handed me a stack of papers, divorce papers. He didn't yell, didn't scream. He just looked at me with a kind of brokenness that shattered my heart. I can't do this, Valentina. I can't look at you without seeing that, without seeing him. You destroyed us. I tried to explain, to apologize, but it all sounded hollow. What excuse could I possibly give? I'd let my family down in the worst way imaginable. Diego wouldn't speak to me, and Lucia kept asking why Daddy was so sad. I couldn't even look at them without breaking down. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyer meetings, custody arrangements, and endless tears. Rodrigo tried to reach out, but I shut him out. I couldn't face him. I couldn't face anyone. I was the villain in my own life, and there was no way to undo the damage. It's been 6 months since that day. The divorce is almost finalized. Javier and I share custody of the kids, but they live with him most of the time. He's been amazing through all of this, putting the kids first, trying to keep their lives as normal as possible. But I know I've scarred them in ways I can't even begin to fix. I still love Javier. I know that sounds ridiculous after everything I've done, but it's true. I miss him every single day. I miss our life together, the way we used to be. But I know there's no going back. I betrayed him in a way that's unforgivable. The kids are slowly adjusting. Diego is starting to talk to me again, but it's strained. Lucia is still her cheerful self, but I can see the confusion in her eyes. I'm trying to be the best mother I can be, but it's hard when I can't even forgive myself. I don't know what the future holds. I'm in therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did and how to move forward. I don't think I'll ever be able to fully make amends for what I've done, but I have to try. For my kids, for myself. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that actions have consequences. I thought I could have it all, that I could live this double life without anyone getting hurt. But that was a lie. And now I have to live with the fallout of my choices. To anyone reading this, don't make the same mistake I did. If you're unhappy, talk to your partner. Seek help. Don't let things fester until it's too late, because once the damage is done, there's no going back.